Hey friends, Editing Michaela here. Just wanted to jump in on the front end of this video where I'm going to take you on a little nature walk. I'm going to talk about the importance of keeping our imaginations nurtured and fueled during times of chaos. And I'm going to introduce you to a new free monthly group that I'm starting to help us do just that, to keep our imaginations engaged and focused on the future that we wanted to create. So I just wanted to jump in here on the front end and just kind of formally introduce you to this space. I'm going to talk more about it in the video, but just on the front end, I want to invite you to the Storycasters Loom. It's going to be a free monthly gathering beginning April 9th. It will be the second Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. Pacific time over on the interwebs through Zoom. So there will be information linked down below for registering for that, finding out more about it. And in this video, I'm going to talk about it, talk about why it feels important in these times, and give you a little sample of what we'll be up to in that space. So join me in that space. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. If you want to hear more from me, if you want to stay connected in this community, please do subscribe to the channel, like the video to help feed the algorithm. And if there's somebody else that you know who needs to nurture their imagination and would like to do so in community, please share this video with them. I would very much appreciate it. Okay, and now on to the video. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Heartscapes, where we're learning the system of Reiki to live lives that are rooted, spacious, connected, and that provision us for the journey home to ourselves. My name is Michaela. Welcome back, well, not to the studio. Welcome to the Wilbur Hot Springs Nature Preserve. Just taking a day out here for some much needed nature time, some spaciousness, a little bit of breathing room, some hiking. And as always, I always feel inspired in these sorts of moments to sit down and have a chat with you all, to just share what is coming through the land and through my body as I walk through the land. Today I wanna invite you into my musings lately about the power of stories, the power of story casting specifically, the practice of pulling stories from alchemy of our imagination, our values, and our deepest desires for the world that we want to live inside of, that we want to see all around us, to tell those stories and to cast them into the future that we wish to live into. This is a practice that I started doing many years ago with students that I was working with. Doing social justice leadership development. I've told that story in other videos. But really seeing the need to create spaces where we could imagine the world absent of the problems that we were so very focused on as we were trying to make those changes. And seeing that it can be very difficult to truly create a transformed world when we are primarily focused on the things that are currently wrong with it or that we currently see as being wrong. That we need to not only stimulate our imagination to help guide our decision making, help us fuel the direction that we want to go in, but to also keep ourselves motivated, enlivened, inspired for the incredibly difficult work of living into that future. And the incredibly difficult reality that if we're talking about big transformation, seeing systems of human development, of relationships with the natural world, of relationships to technology, to each other, and so on, that probably we're talking about a future that is going to outlive us, that is farther out into the horizon than we are currently living inside of. And it can feel really challenging to stay motivated to create a world that we will not really see. However, this is a mindset that humanity has held for much of our existence, to be able to imagine and to make decisions and plans and take actions that are in service of 7 generations out, 100 years out, 150, 200 years out from where we are now. To feel the connection through not only to our ancestors, through our bodies, our bones, our DNA, our collective memories, our dreams, but to also feel that connection to those future generations that will see us as their ancestors. It's a thought process that I've been in a renewed way really since 2020, since the COVID year, when it really became impossible to ignore that on multiple levels, we are at a critical juncture at which change is not only possible, but inevitable. I mean, change is always inevitable. There will always be changes happening all the time. But I mean big changes, ground shifting changes, humanity shifting changes, changes that, really define the course of the next big piece of time. These critical junctures, happen throughout history and have many times. And then there's these periods of seemingly, stable times that are in between. We happen to be living in a time of great change and transition. We are at a critical juncture. Changes in politics, changes in the environment, the environmental crises that are raging around us in undeniable ways, the systems that we've counted on uh, no longer so able to be counted on in many ways, crumbling around us in some specific and unpredictable ways. There's a lot to feel challenged by in these times. And I've been talking about this in the space for a little while. And what I really know to be true is that the threads that I have followed throughout my life that have shaped my values, my choices, the work that I do in the world, the way that I structure my time, have led, sounds so dramatic, and it's true, have led me to this place, this critical juncture from which change becomes possible. And that part of that leading is in having developed over many, many years this mindset of story casting. This this sweet spot where I am very aware of the dangers and the perils of these times of change, this critical juncture. And yet I am also very alive with the sense of possibility that is here. I may not always feel that way. There may be times of despair. There may be, I don't know what the future holds for me, for any of us. But I do know that for the last 5 years, I have felt very alive with possibility, very aware of this critical juncture at which change becomes possible, and very connected to a sense of possibility. One of my teachers, Norma Wong, talks about the many horizons that open up at these junctures at which change becomes possible. That there are horizons leading in all directions, and that some of them are horizons of disaster, horizons of extinction, horizons of, all of the horrors that we can imagine. Some of them are horizons of, I don't even know what. Somebody else will have to tell me what those horizons are. And then there's horizons that lead to a future that aligns with values that are connected to life, that are connected to respect of life, that are connected to the principles that we talk about here on this channel that come, in this space through the system of Reiki, but that also come through many other traditions. A belief in the interconnection of life, the sacredness of life, and a recognition of the way in which life renews itself according to patterns, according to balances, and a recognition that humanity at some point in our history in the not so distant past, as far as the wholeness of our time evolutionarily, in the not so distant past, humanity decided to try to opt out of those systems of life, those cycles of nature, those principles of renewal that have kept this whole thing beautifully, you know, moving and renewing and evolving and responding for all the time. At some point, we decided that we could opt out, that we could be a different kind of creature. We didn't have to be an animal of this world. We could be a dictator of this world. We could be a molder of this world. We could be one who shapes this world according to some other principle, some other set of principles, rather than participating in the principles that exist and putting our mark on the world by being in participation. And that has led us to great turmoil and great destruction of the world, the land, our relationship to it, the resources that we all depend on, our relationship to ourselves and to each other as we lose that fundamental connection with life. And there's pathways back. We have so many models, we have so many teachings, we have so many direct experiences quite outside of what we might learn in books or from teachers that show us that we are, in fact, animals of this world, and that not only can we, but we must reclaim our place, and that the world wants us to. That the earth not only, would really appreciate it if we stopped devastating her, but more than that, even, that the earth misses us as part of the patterns of life, that we are needed in a way that we at some point decided that we weren't. So we're at, many points of critical juncture. And there is a horizon available to us that moves us back into right relationship with the cycle of life. And that leads to abundance for humanity. And the way that we stay focused on it and align our daily choices to it and stay enlivened by it is by telling the stories of it. Stories of the far horizon, just past our ability to truly see, where the earth's curvature goes a little farther than our eyes can see. Telling stories of the far horizon is something that humans have always done because we naturally, inherently tell story with each other. And so, knowing how easy it is in times such as these, times of critical junctures at which change becomes possible, I want to hold spaces for us to tell those stories and to weave them together into a tapestry of possibility that can help buoy us in these times, that can help guide our decisions, where we want to place our attention, how we want to fortify our values, maybe values or beliefs that it's time to shift. To hear from other people what matters to them through the stories that they tell. And so I'm creating a space, a monthly space called the Storycasters Loom, weaving our stories of the far horizon. It's a free gathering that will meet over the interwebs. It will involve some time dropping in, connecting, and a little bit of practice. And then a guided meditation that focuses on various aspects of the story of the far horizon. So following guided prompts to help generate our imaginative experience and bring forward specific details of that story. Because we do want to be detailed. We want to know specifically what our descendants will be experiencing across many realms of life in the time of the far horizon as we wish it to be. We want to be as detailed as we can, as focused as we can, and also as zoomed out as we can to hold both of those perspectives. Because again, part of what this does is help guide decisions as we move forward, helps us kind of put in the records in whatever sphere of influence we have, what it is that we want to see from this world, from our experiences, and from our responsibility as participants in this world who have, created a great deal of influence that, at this point we could say is largely negative influence in the world. So that is what I'm up to. And I want to invite you all to join me for those circles. I'm going to try them out for about 6 months. And then if they feel alive, if it feels like it's valuable and generative, then we'll keep going with them. I'll put the link to those down below in the description, of course. For this video, though, I thought I would just try out a little bit of story casting with you. Rooted here in this land that I'm visiting. I've never been here to Wilbur Hot Springs, to their nature preserve, but I've visited different areas in this region. This is a couple of hours. Should have looked at the map more clearly before I got out of Wi-Fi zone. But I would say this is probably about 2 hours north from where I grew up, and it's an hour and a half northwest, southwest, let's say west of where I'm living right now. So it's a region that feels very familiar, but I've not been on this particular land before. So it as I was walking, I was doing a little bit of story casting, and I thought I would share that with you. Um, so when I'm story casting, I'll just share that a couple of principles that are always true in what I'm imagining into. First, that leadership and governance over a given region has been largely given to the indigenous people of that region in collaboration with governance of each community that is living there, people of all kinds living in community on the land. So there's governance and leadership of the indigenous people of that land, and in collaboration and connection, deep sacred connection with all of the communities that are there, and then those that system of governance kind of um, goes out in concentric rings to decisions made that impact larger and larger groups of people, out to national levels, if there's even nations in the far future. So that's one thing that is a given. I will say that I don't know in this moment exactly the history of this particular land. I believe that this is in Miwok territory because the Miwok territory spans where I live now up in the Sacramento area down to where I am from, the San Francisco Bay Area, and this spot is right in between. So I believe this is Miwok territory. If I am wrong about that, I will, once I get back to Wi-Fi, I will look that up. And if I'm wrong, I will put a correction right here on the screen. Um, Anywho's, so those are my disclaimers for this particular story casting that I'm working with incomplete information about this place. Okay, so I'm gonna just take a minute and just to feel into which piece of the story I want to tell in this moment. In the time of the far horizon, I imagine the life of my descendants 6 generations out. I imagine my great 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 granddaughter walking this very trail on which I sit. She's come here for an annual gathering to the Wilbur Nature Preserve, a place which a couple hundred years ago only spanned a few dozen acres, a tiny little piece of preserved nature in the foothills of Central California near the coast. These days, the nature preserve spans miles in every direction. So much so people don't even think about it as a nature preserve anymore. It just simply is the land. It's simply the way that things should be and always will be. And for the children, it's the way it's always been, for they know very little of the time when nature was under such constant, persistent threat from human development. The children don't remember a time, they can't imagine a time when the species of this land were so few in number, when the great animals and plants that are from here, that have developed themselves over millennia, were on the brink of extinction, many of them already lost to history. The children of this time cannot remember. They cannot even fathom. And yet those who gather annually at this place, they do remember, because it is their work to continue living into the repair that their ancestors began 100 years ago, when the earth was at the brink of climate disaster and many humans had given up even the possibility of doing anything about it. Apathy was persistent, and tyrants were taking advantage of the people's fear and dissociation and their feelings of helplessness. And yet there were those who persisted in hopefulness. And in times of great collapse that are told about in stories and in histories, many of them oral histories that have been preserved through storytelling, there was an energy that arose, people seizing the opportunity when things collapsed to build something new, and that realigned humanity with the world. And so, at this annual gathering, many days of feasting, of reconnecting, of being in relationship, the people to each other, to the land, storytelling, trading news. This was a time of remembering those choices and assessing where those choices had led. This gathering of people who would have at one time been called climate scientists or environmental scientists, now simply known as land listeners. They gather to assess. And what they find as they tell the stories of their research, of their experiences this year, is that they are seeing a great many interesting things beginning to emerge, patterns that are now established, no longer anomaly. This descendant of mine, we'll call her Alehakim. That's my name spelled backwards. I always liked it. Alehakim has been studying the reemergence of believed to be extinct species, as well as the emergence of new species that became possible as the pressure of climate collapse was backed off, was began to shift in positive directions. In particular, her focus is on keystone predator species. You can tell a lot about the health of an ecosystem if you look at the health of the keystone predators in that system, because you cannot have large predators if you do not have all of the cascading forms of life that go down the food chain, down to the microbes in the soil that create the liveliness of the plants, that are feasted upon by insects, that are feasted upon by small rodents and lizards, which are preyed upon by small predators, which are preyed upon by larger predators, and so on. You can tell so much about the health and well-being of an ecosystem by looking at the keystone predators. For so long, humans were the keystone predators in just about every ecosystem, and our health was not good. Physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, culturally, spiritually, our health was very bad for a very long time. We were very, very out of balance. And part of coming back into balance was to choose to stop being a keystone predator and to take our place in a more balanced way. Alay Hakim has been studying the reemergence of wolves in this landscape, long, long hunted and driven away from North America. But with the removal of climate pressure, with the removal of laws allowing for the hunting of keystone predators across the world, every continent now banning the hunting of keystone predators. She was beginning to observe, she and her teams, the silent, shy reemergence of wolf communities here. And this was very, very good news. Long disappeared from this land, replaced by the more opportunistic, smaller, more scrappy coyote and the solitary mountain lion who could better hide. But the communal presence of wolf packs in this landscape was very good news indeed. Over on the coast in the San Francisco area, similar gathering, feasting, stories, and sharing of research was occurring, looking at the regeneration of sea life and the shocking, amazing pattern that had begun to emerge of incremental sea level reduction. Incremental sea level reduction as global warming miraculously had begun to back off. And so that sea level rise had peaked about 50 years ago, and slowly, slowly, the sea levels were starting to come back down. And so, as she stood right over there at a vista overlooking this beautiful valley, she reflected on the choices that had been made by countless people, countless communities, countless generations to step back into balance with the world and with humanity to each other. And you can see it in the interactions between human dwellings, human spaces, and nature. It's not that humans are not here in the nature preserve. They are, in fact, small communities nestled in circular designed neighborhoods, tucked into the hills, looking more a part of the landscape than something imposed upon it. Homes that look almost as if they were built from nature and yet containing the most high tech technology. Because at a certain point, humanity decided that the incredible technology that we had developed was much better put to designing human systems that regenerate the world and that keep everything abundant rather than putting that technology to war, to isolation, and to destruction. And so the homes are completely self sufficient, generating their own energy, collecting water from dew in the air, from rainfall. You can see the glittering strips of rustless alloys that feed it down into underground cisterns to hold the water. On the roofs of the houses, there are gardens, and you can see children tending those gardens happily, getting their education directly from their experiences from the land, from their communities. Each child knowing what they need to do to keep the system running, understanding where their food comes from and the relationship between that food and the world around them. You can hear the sound of music rising from the center of these communities, these central communal spaces that are encircled by dwellings. And Elay Hakim looked over this space, this place where true connection is rooted in the way in which each person leaves their lives, rooted, spacious, and connected. And she smiles and she sighs. She pulls a bottle of water out of her bag, takes a sip of cool, clean water, and she knows that everything's going to be okay. Okay, here's a little bit of story casting focused on relationship to the land. In our story casting circles, we'll look at focuses like what are the children doing? What is the experience of our elders? Imagine a problem that you're facing today that seems impossible to solve. Imagine it completely solved, completely disappeared. What then becomes possible? Lots of other prompts. All right, folks, that's enough of my sitting in the woods talking to YouTube moment. I appreciate you imagining with me a little bit. I invite you to come storycast with me. In the Storycasters Loom, we will be meeting every month. I want to say the second Wednesday of the month, but I can't remember in this moment exactly when I have scheduled them. But those details will be down below in the description. You can check it out. And I would love to hear what is alive for you. What is the far horizon that you are orienting towards? What is one detail that you would like to see, that you can imagine coming from a time of making choices that lead us towards a beautiful future? What do you want to see in that future? Let me know down below. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me as you go throughout your day. May you be deeply provisioned. May your imagination be deeply nourished for the day ahead. Until next time, I love you. Goodbye.